Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click on that like button if you like my video. Also click on that notification bell. Thank you. Adding a new disk. What are the different purposes or requirement for adding a disk to your computer? One requirement is that you have a disk space issue, meaning you have a 100 gig of disk space that came with your computer. Now that disk space is running out of space. You are doing so much work that you do need more space. That's why you need to add an extra disk to it. Or high availability, meaning if you want to have two disks running together and you want to have them set up in a primary and backup kind of setup, like a RAID configuration, then you could add a second disk. If one disk fails, the second disk picks up. Or the third requirement I would say is the application requirement for additional disks. Maybe you are installing Oracle or any type of application that requires you to have a separate and dedicated disk in your computer in order for you to run that application. The reason the application requires an additional disk is because the disk that has the operating system would have the same read and write at the same time an application wants to do the read and write. So in order to improve the productivity and have the system efficient, most of the time application requires a dedicated separate disk. What we will learn in this lesson is how we could add a disk from a VirtualBox. It is so easy. When you have your machine running on a virtual environment, all you have to do is simply power off the virtual machine, add a virtual disk from your virtualization technology, go to your operating system, partition it, and map or mount to your operating system. It's that easy. But if you had a physical system and you wanted to add another disk, then it is very hard unless you have additional slots in your computer hardware where you see in front of your computer if it's a server. If you have additional slots, then it's a lot easier. You could just pull out the empty slot cover and then you could put it in a new disk. Also, we will learn how we could format a new disk. We will learn how to map or mount that new disk once we complete the formatting of that disk. And of course, at the end, we will verify it by writing to that disk by creating files and folders. To add a disk, first of all, what we need to do is we need to shut down our Windows server. Without having the Windows server shut down, it cannot, or VirtualBox cannot add a new disk. There are other virtualization technologies out there that allows you to add a new disk while the machine is running. But again, it depends on your virtualization technology. For now, we are using VirtualBox, so we will follow the rules that VirtualBox has to offer. I'll go straight into my virtual machine, which is the Windows server. I'll go ahead and shut it down and shut down. While this is shutting it down, I am going to open up the Oracle VM VirtualBox application. The Oracle VirtualBox application shows all my virtual machines that I have or I am running. If I wanted to add an extra virtual disk to any of these clients, I'll pick that client, which is my lab Windows machine. I'll go to Setting. I'll go to Storage and then click on this little icon that says Add Hard Disk. If you notice, I have labwindows.vdi, which is the 50 gig we added initially when we were building our computer. Anyway, you could click on Controller SATA again and then click on Add Hard Disk. You are about to add a virtual disk to your controller SATA. Would you like to create a new empty file to hold the disk contents, or select an existing one. If you want to have an existing one selected, just click on New, create a new disk, because we are adding a new disk. This is going to ask you what type of format or the virtualization format. Don't forget, this is not the file system format, this is a virtualization. What type of virtualization do you want on that disk? We want the VDI, which is recognizable by the Oracle VirtualBox. Click Next. Dynamically allocated, leave it default. Next. What is the name that you want to give that disk? Let's call it data. And what is the size that you want to give? We want to give it only 5 gig. Or simply type 5G. Or you could simply move your cursor like this and select the size that you want. So I'm going to put 00. That means it's 5 gig. Go ahead and click create. Now this is going to create another disk just like that we had before, and this is the new disk, 5 gig, and actual size is 2 megabyte. Why it's actual size 2 megabyte? Because Oracle VirtualBox as of right now only allocated 2 megabyte from your actual host, which is your actual server, or which is your actual Windows machine that is running the Oracle VirtualBox. Once you start adding disk data to this, it will grow. But it will not grow, it will not give you the entire space right away. Hey, you asked for 5 gig, I'll give you 5 gig, and I'll make sure nobody takes that. No, it doesn't work like that in virtual technology. Virtual technology says, hey, you want 5 gig, I will give you 5 gig. I'll give you the allocation. And if you need more, you could add more, and I will leave it to the size that it is right now. As you add it, I'll grow it. But then it gets more complicated if there's a thin provisioning, thick provisioning, but let's not get into that. So let's go ahead and click OK. Now we have an extra disk. Now I want you to go ahead and power on your Windows server. Go ahead and log in. Click on Start menu. Server Manager. While the Server Manager is opening up, I want you to go to your File Explorer. Go to this PC, and you will see right here your disk is still 50 gig. You're probably thinking, where is that 5 gig that I just added? That 5 gig is not going to show up here because it hasn't been partitioned and it hasn't been mounted on any drive letter. That is why we are going to close this down, and we'll go to, in the Servers Manager, we'll go to Tools, Computer Management. When you are in the Computer Management, click on Disk Management. As soon as you click on Disk Management, it is telling you you must initialize a disk before Logical Disk Manager can access it, meaning the operating system is smart enough to recognize that there is a new disk that's been attached to this operating system, and it asking you to initializing, meaning format it. As you could see right at the bottom, this is the disk we just added. Disk 0 was a 50 gig when we wanted to install the operating system. The second one we just added, which is the 5 gig. So we could cancel it and go back to disk 1 and right click and do the partition, or we could just take advantage of this already opened up initialized disk window, and we'll go from here. Use the following partition style for the selected disk: MBR, master boot record, or GPT. There are different type of boot records, partition tables. Just leave it default. Click OK. Now it has been selected for that partition, which is we picked MBR. Now click on this disk, and I want you to right click. Sorry, not this disk. Click on this area, which is like a shaded area, which you'll see it has a black stripe on it. This one has a blue because it has already been partitioned and it's already been mounted. This one is not, so as it says unallocated, meaning it is there, but it has not been allocated. Right click and click on New Simple Volume because we are going to create a volume. This is going to open up a welcome to New Simple Volume wizard. Click Next. Simple volume size in megabyte. You could actually partition that into different volumes. You could have 1 gig, 1 gig, 1 gig each for 5 different volumes, or you could have the entire disk added to one volume. So we'll leave that default. Click Next. Now, where do you want to assign once it partition it? Where do you want to assign it to, or where do you want to map it to? I want you to go ahead and pick P as for personal. Assign the following drive letter P. Click Next. Do not format this volume. If you are not formatting this volume, then what's the purpose of having it? Good question. There are different ways that you could actually have a disk volume there without the partitioning if you want to have a raw data added to it. Most of the time these raw data are used for Oracle or like any kind of database where you could throw all the data as a raw data to these disks, but we do want to write our files and directories in it. That's why we'll go ahead and pick format this volume with the following setting. File system that we are picking up NTFS, FAT32, RE file system. There are 3 different files, and we'll pick the standard one. Allocation, unit size, default, label, volume label, new volume, or you could write down data. Perform a quick format, enable file and folder compression. Just click on leave it default, perform a quick format, click Next. It'll give you a summary and click Finish. This is going to do a quick format, which is going to take a few seconds. As soon as it's done, it is actually going to mount that 5 gig on your P drive. Nice. You see now the color changed. It changed from black to blue. It means it is mounted, it is partitioned, it is mapped, and you could write data to it. Now go ahead and close this computer management window. Close server manager window and go to your file explorer. Go to this PC. Come down, scroll down, and here you will see you have a primary disk, which is C drive, which you have all your operating system and other file system files and folders. Now you have another drive. Look at that, data, which is mapped to P drive. That has a space of 4.96 gigabyte of free space out of 4.99. This is where you actually could write your data. You could create files and folders. You could go ahead and double click, right click here, and you could create a folder. Let's call it Superman. You could go into Superman, you could create a file, and you could call it, let's say, Clark Kent. Now you see this is the specific partition or the specific map drive is used for a different purpose. Maybe you could write different applications to it. Anyway, this is how you could add an extra disk to your existing system. If you are in a physical environment, it works the same way. All you have to do is open up the top of your computer, add a new disk physically, and perform the same task we just did. But since we are in virtual environment, it's much easier to add a disk, an extra disk that is needed for your applications.